Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And that makes me Angela Yeager. We have a new episode for you here in Isolation Land. And Brian and I are remote. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing and staying at home, but we just couldn't help ourselves. And thanks to the wonderful suggestion of our volunteer, Brad Wortman, who's running this for us today, we decided to bring you an episode of Real Film Snobs from our own living rooms. So we're going to do an episode on catching up on 2019 films because Brian and I have had some time to watch some movies over the past few weeks, as I hope all of you have had the chance to enjoy some great cinema from the comfort of your home. So we're going to go with our first movie, which is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And we have a clip for that, which you probably saw at the top of the show if everything goes right with our new setup. And this is a French drama about an artist who goes to a remote village to paint a portrait of a young woman who is promised to a man she has never met in another country. The two women soon strike up a friendship, and then something more blossoms between them. This is a period piece, and it's a romance. So don't let that dissuade you if you're not a fan of either of those genres, because it is, in fact, one of the best movies of the year. And by year, I mean it's a 2019 movie, but we saw it here in Film Snobs Land in Salem, Oregon, just before, I think actually just before all of this craziness with the coronavirus started. So we were lucky to get to see it on the big screen, which I highly recommend if you can to do that, but in the future. But for now, you can see it on streaming. It's a 4-star film for me. It's one of the best films of the year, and I would say one of the greatest romances we've had in a very long time on the silver screen.
Yeah, it gets some comparisons a little bit to Call Me by Your Name, not just because of being a gay love story, but there's certain aspects of the ending which I'll get to. But there isn't the creepiness of the age difference and the young age. These are two women who are certainly adults, and it's shot in such a way, Angela. So this is the last film I saw before all of the isolation happened, and this is one of the main reasons for me for wanting to do the show while we're at home, because I've just been busting at the seams talking about this film, and now people are finally getting the opportunity to see it with it being available on streaming. The look of this film, I always say cinematography should give you the heat or the coldness of the scene that's in there. This one actually gives a real beautiful look, but in a way that it feels like a portrait at times. Everyone seems kind of flawless until we get some really close-ups, then some close-ups. Then we're able actually to see the lines of people's faces, but it's done so well, and I love the look of that. I love watching professional, at work. We get to see the brush strokes. We get to actually see her painting, her studying. We're watching for little tiny details on the person that she's painting that I absolutely loved. And this is a film that came down the pipe. It had a lot of heat coming through. You went and saw it way early up in Portland because you were scared it might actually skip our hometown. I saw it just before the quarantine with 2 other people in the theater, and turned around and spoke to them before the 6 feet of separation happened. But turned and spoke to them and said, "We're going to talk about this movie, right?" And in the lobby, and we did. It inspired a long 15-20 minute conversation until the staff kicked us out. What was really noticeable, right off this film, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the piano as well, because of the love story. But when she is sitting down in the very beginning after saving her canvases in the water, she drives off in the heat of the fireplace, and she's naked, and we see their silhouette. And she's actually crouched in a very comfortable position. But my first thought was, oh, that's not an attractive angle, because you can see a little bit of a belly on her, and you would never see that in a Hollywood picture. And I began to see the aspects of it just being shot from a woman's perspective. This is shot by a female director, and you actually get to see that touch, which is normally something I don't really pay too much attention to. I just kind of put a little bookmark in my mind and thought, well, let's see if more of that applies. And it kind of did, and I really was you're able to see, women in a very natural state. Obviously, we do see some nudity. It's a grown-up film, but in a way that you would normally see in a Hollywood picture where things are just right at a certain angle. You get to see women laying on their back. That's not the most attractive position. It's a very natural position for women, but it's not the most attractive in terms of what Hollywood is usually sending us in cinemas. And so I really get to see get that freedom that they had, and the freedom that they have for each other, which is, you really felt the attraction between these two. That's what was really great about this film, is you could understand why they had an attraction for one another.
Yeah, they have a lot of chemistry on screen. And I actually laughed when you said, "Oh, you know, they're naked in some scenes. It's a grown-up film." And I was like, "Well, it's a French film, so there is that." But I should say, you know, the part where made me think, yes, a lot of French films have nudity, but the part that makes me think it's directed by a woman is compare this to a movie like Blue is the Warmest Color, which a few years ago was the big hit at Cannes Film Festival. It's a French film about two young, much younger girls who you know, have a romantic relationship directed by a male director that some people after the fact thought maybe it was a little bit exploitive. It's very much like glammed up type of, you know, sexual poses, and it's a different kind of movie than this one. This is but this movie is beautifully shot. It's a gorgeous looking movie. I thought the romance just really came through on the screen. I was just really with these characters all the way. And there's also a third character I should mention who is the maid that works at the house that they're in, and she's a very interesting kind of kind of completes their triangle, if you will. She's not involved in their relationships in that way, but she's another person to kind of bounce ideas off of, have conversations with, another pair of eyes to see through a different lens, because she's very much of a working class status, which the other two women are in. You know, one, the artist is in kind of the art group, and she has a lot of freedom, and you and I talked about this at length. And then the woman who's being married against her will, is probably upper class, we're guessing, or at least part of the, we're not exactly sure of her whole background, but we get the sense that one house, based on the size of that house, I'm guessing at one point her family had some money, and she's trapped. And so she literally is a piece of property to be bought and sold. And so I thought that was really interesting. Also very similar to another movie we'll be reviewing a little later that you recommended.
Yeah, you know, and it made me also think of the movie Disobedience from a filmmaker that we're also going to be talking about here in just a moment, that you had two beautiful actresses that we thought for sure would be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, this will be a very interesting love story, that I thought for sure those two would have just immense chemistry, and there just wasn't. It didn't feel believable. It just didn't necessarily work. And this one actually kind of, given the time, even though it's only a short period of time, like 12 days.
Oh, it took me a minute to realize what movie you were talking about.
Yeah,
Rachel Weisz and Rachel McAdams.
Yeah,
it was like,
remember that? And it didn't
two
work.
Gorgeous women and not a drop of chemistry.
Exactly. And so these two have that, and there's a great, and there's an amazing ending. And I'm not going to give anything away. When they say that there are tears or that I cried, that doesn't always necessarily mean a sadness. It also can be, you know, tears of joy or mixed emotions. And so at the end of this film, there's an amazing one shot where we get to see someone go through a range of emotions, and it reminds me a lot of Call Me by Your Name, but without the stupid credits going in the way, which I've never understood why that was done. It was the big dramatic, you know, push of that film. It's a big showpiece for that actor, and the credits are in his face. And I just thought that was the dumbest thing I just can imagine you could do, and what a horrible way to treat your actor. And this actually gives the moment to breathe, the proper moment that you need. There was, you know, the portrait at the end that we get to see, I thought was beautifully done. There was an extra little shot there to show a corner of a book that I didn't necessarily feel was necessary, because you didn't have to hit us over the head, but I understood you're trying to stick the landing there. Yeah, I just could not recommend this film high enough. My dog is tired of hearing me talk about it, because she's the only person I've got here in the house, so I've been telling her nonstop, and we've sat and we've watched it together, though she fell asleep.
Yeah, and I recommend this director, Céline Sciamma is her name, and she's made 3 other films that I know of before this, and quite a few of them are available on streaming, Criterion. And Water Lilies is the one, you and I actually reviewed Girlhood, her other one, for the show, and I liked that one, but Water Lilies is one of her earliest films, and it actually stars the same actress who plays Heloise in this film, and she's amazing in it. So I really recommend people check out Water Lilies in addition to this film.
So Rocky, our floor director, is going crazy right now, because we're going a little far over on our time for that. So we're going to move on to our next movie, which is Gloria Bell. This one stars Julianne Moore. It's actually a remake of the same director, Sebastián Lelio. Thank you. And who's the director of A Fantastic Woman and A Disobedience, which we just talked about, as well as Gloria. It's about a free-spirited woman in her 50s, kind of seeks out life and love through clubs, and meets a man played by John Turturro. John Turturro, does anyone remember John Turturro? I mean, the only time I've seen him was when I flipped through the channels and he's in a Transformer film. And it's just so sad to see him wasted. It was great to see him on the big screen, and
In a
of
real
course,
role again.
in a real role. And of course, you're going to see Julianne Moore. And you know, I texted out to our group of friends and said, "Is there a better living actress right now than Julianne Moore?" I mean, I just think that there's everything that she feels that we automatically feel. And whenever she's, you know, in the first portion of this movie, you get to see this woman who's, you know, kind of living alone, listening to the music from her childhood, and she has a little routine. She meets a man, she becomes happy, and I'm thinking, I just want the movie to end now because I just want to see her happy. That's how you feel about it. And John Turturro, who hasn't played a romantic lead since what, Jungle Fever? I remember that he had the crush on the girl and was never allowed to progress. And I always just think of that performance whenever I think of John Turturro. I just
I
absolutely
hadn't
love
thought
him in
about
that.
that. I've always thought he was really handsome. I don't get it because I like him a lot. So I was super excited to
Yeah.
see him play romantic lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with a man with confidence, you know, a man that can, and an actor that can stand across from her and not be overtaken.
No, yeah, because he's a great actor, and you kind of forget that because he hasn't done much in recent years. Yeah, this was an interesting movie because I've actually seen the original, which is just called Gloria, and it's a fantastic movie. It's a Chilean film. He's a Chilean director. I'm not sure, other than the fact that he just wanted to give a vehicle for Julianne Moore, what the reason for this remake was, because it's almost exactly the same. They made very few changes from the original, other than the original has quite a bit more in the love scenes, if you will. So, you know, American films, they cut that quite a bit. And Julianne Moore is not one to shy away from those type of things. I think that was probably just for the censors in America. But so I already knew what was going to happen. So it was for me just kind of a journey. Also, I was curious to see if they would change a lot, but they didn't. But just to watch Julianne Moore on the screen the whole time. So it's just like it's a solid 3-star movie. I didn't think it was amazing. I forgot. I did not remember that he directed Disobedience. Weirdly enough, Fantastic Woman was great. So I don't know what happened there. That was a misfire for him.
Oh, it was such a great premise too, and I really loved that idea of that film. And it just, yeah, it was, you know, sometimes that just happens. And I didn't write that, and I could easily look it up right now since I'm sitting in front of my computer. The actor who played her son in this film, I've seen him in a couple things now, and I really like him. He looks like Vincent D'Onofrio, young Vincent D'Onofrio, and is very, very compelling. And I really like his acting, so I'm hoping to see more for him. But that's one also streaming now. It has been streaming for a while, so that one's available. Should we move on to our next movie? Because I know I'm going to be long-winded on the next one, so we're just moving right along. So the next movie is The Nightingale, and this is a big, highly anticipated follow-up film from the debut of Jennifer Kent, who made The Babadook, which was a big indie hit a few years back about a woman dealing with grief and the loss of her husband. And here, The Nightingale is a young woman who is indentured servant for a soldier. Her and her husband work for them, and that soldier then murders her husband and her child, or a group of soldiers that he's in charge of there. And so she goes after them for revenge. And this was shot during the 1825 the Black War in Tasmania. And so she actually gets a Tasmanian tracker to help her find them as they're making their way across the country. This was a absolutely fantastic film. I really enjoyed this film, and I couldn't wait for Angela to see this one because you hadn't seen it. It had been on streaming, but you didn't have that streaming service, so I got to see it ahead of time. And I love the fact that here is, you know, we saw a movie a couple years ago called Revenge, and it was a revenge picture, and it was very much it was a foreign film, but it was very much a Hollywood state of mind. It had big guns. It was, you know, people were constantly sweaty, and you know,
it was more like a B movie almost.
Yeah, a little bit of a
Campy.
grindhouse picture. Here's this one's a bit of a period piece, but I love the fact that she's a woman of those times. She isn't necessarily trained how to fight. She's trained how to kill. She isn't trained how to shoot a gun, really. I don't think she had many, and she actually has issues and difficulties firing a weapon. And so even though she has the moxie and the hate in her heart for the revenge, she doesn't necessarily have the tools how to do this. So really puts you on the edge of your seat when you're watching this. And you really feel for her. You really disgust the guys that she's after, played by some really great character actors I've seen before in other films and TV shows. And it's just a heck of a film that it's not just like, you know, but at the end of the journey, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm very emotional. You're sad for the situations of what's going on, because along the way, we also learn a little more history about what's going on in the country at that time and what's happening to the Aborigine people there and the genocide that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to pay like $3 to watch this on streaming, but I did watch it. And I was so excited to see this because it had a huge amount of buzz at the film festivals and then dropped in theaters and did nothing. And I'm not too surprised. I know, I think there was a lot of buzz at the theaters that people were getting sick and that it was like the violence was over the top and gratuitous. I remember people talking about that. And, you know, maybe when it showed at Sundance, and I didn't, no, don't get me wrong. The violence is horrific. Sexual violence
Yes.
in particular is
Yeah.
really, really hard to watch. But I don't think it's very graphic compared to a lot of Hollywood movies, for instance, particularly on the sexual part of it. Some of the other violence that happens later is pretty graphic.
Angela, I'm going to interrupt there for just a second. I think the reason of it is because I mean, this is a weird situation, but the way the angles that she was using, she used her perspective. So when she's being assaulted, you see it from her perspective, what she's looking at, and when she's looking up at, and the camera's moving along with the
Right.
actions that's happening against
Right.
her.
Which is very interesting.
Yes, and that really gets you involved and puts you in the first person perspective, and I can understand why people would be upset.
Right, especially when she sees her baby just a few arm lengths away while she's being assaulted. That scene is really, really hard to
Oh.
watch. It is a period piece, and I thought it's really well done. And you know, related to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I think those scenes are shot with that woman's perspective. She chose not to show some of the gratuitous sexual part of it, and instead, both when the main protagonist, but later on in the film, there's an Aboriginal woman who's being assaulted, and that she again switches to her perspective, which I thought was also really interesting way to shoot that. Not to get too academic, but I'm going to for a second. I thought it was really interesting with the parallel of the main character of Claire, along with Billy, who's the Tasmanian Aboriginal man, because they both have a lot of trauma, if you will, PTSD really going on for different reasons. I mean, he has the trauma of colonialism. He's literally had his entire family taken from him, his entire homeland invaded by people who are now killing them. And she has this trauma of patriarchy as well as because she's been enslaved and basically sold to a man, this soldier, and is his property. And a woman at that time could be a person's property. So both of them are considered less than human. And this is where their bond sort of starts. And I thought that was really interesting.
What I loved about that is it didn't hit you over the head. This is one of those learning films that after the movie, I immediately looked at it and was like, what's the Black War? What's going on here? What is this? And so, and because I understand, and I've seen enough films that, obviously what a woman's worth and in the past, obviously, has depicted a lot of films, but it doesn't spell it out. And I like that because we kind of, some of those things you're just going to assume that you should understand these things. And if you're not, you're going to have to look them up. And I appreciated that about it. But when they're going along on their journey, of course, then they have to role play that she's, that he's, he's her captive. And then they bump into other people that are also transporting some Aboriginals. And one of them just says, my whole tribe is gone. All of us are gone. They're absolutely gone. And he starts to flip out, and the emotions start to escalate, and you know what's going to be happening, and you're just on your edge of your seat, going, "Please don't let this happen. This
right.
We don't want to see any more violence." And you kind of see those things over and over. I could see, I can see it's not stylized violence. It's not Bad Boys is back in the theaters. It's not like it's all those Hollywood movies, where we see like John Wick. I mean, here's a film that we see hundreds of people are shot in the head and the chest, or vice versa.
Yeah, but it feels real.
This it's slow, it's up close, it's personal, and when those things, when the violence finally does happen, yeah, it is brutal. When she takes a man's life with a knife, I believe there, it's not like, the first couple, one stab and the guy's dead. No, there's still some struggle. She's having to actually kill him. And you can kind of see her going through her eyes, like, how long does this take? How many times do I have to do this until this man is, has stopped breathing?
Yeah, it's pretty horrific.
Yeah, and there's blood
really
all over her
scene.
face. Yeah,
some great photography. Yeah, she's definitely a director to watch. Between this and Babadook, very different films, but both films about the psychology of women, women's trauma, but completely different stories. I wasn't familiar with many of the actors in here, other than the one who plays the lieutenant, the real bad guy, the super bad guy. I guess the actress who plays Claire, she's an Irish actress, but I guess she's in Game of Thrones. So if that gets you interested in the movie, people who watch TV, not me. Then there you go. I also thought the guy who played Billy was great.
Yeah, all the way around. I mean, everyone just felt kind of natural performances, and when you're not too familiar with some of the actors, it's always really nice when that is, because then it just
you believe
pull
it,
you away from it.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to our next film, Honey Boy. And this came out a while ago. I actually did see this in the theater, and it is easily available on streaming services. It's also directed by a woman, Alma Har'el, and I believe it's her debut feature film. And this is actually a sort of biography of sorts of the actor Shia LaBeouf. And in the film, Noah Jupe plays a young child actor who is very much plagued by the demons of his father. And his father is played by Shia LaBeouf, and sort of an interesting twist. And then it flips back and forth between like present day. So Lucas Hedges, a great actor who seems to be in everything these days, plays him as an adult. And then Noah Jupe, a young actor who also seems to be in everything these days, who is also the child in I almost said Fast and the Furious, wow. In Ford versus Ferrari, sorry, thank you. I knew there was an F in there in Cars. He is also really good in this film. This is a film with a lot of great performances, and I think how much you get into the story depends on how much you kind of buy into the like whole poor child actor thing. You know, it kind of goes through, he becomes an addict and he's kind of sorting out his demons. He's kind of a jerk as an adult. You know, as a kid, he's a sympathetic character, but he grows into kind of a narcissistic jerk. And so a lot of the flashbacks are him kind of talking about his childhood in therapy. So I don't think it's a film a lot of people can relate with unless you've been a child actor at some point. It's interesting though, because he's not like wealthy when he's little, and he and his dad are living in this kind of crummy motel and living, you know, hand to mouth. And that was also very interesting to me. I think it's a lot of great performances, but I didn't love the movie.
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily that they're living in strife there in those apartments. I think that's just where the shoot is, and that's what the accommodations that they have in terms of the budget of the movie. I you know, Shia LaBeouf, if it's loosely based on his life, he, you know, had success pretty early on, I think, you know, but I don't know necessarily. Shia is the big reason to come here. As many of the wonderful performances there are, but he really steals every scene that comes in. He's very charismatic. A lot of times he's speaking in a way and a truth that you're like, okay, yeah, that's good information. Then of course he just makes these horrible bad decisions. He's dealing with alcoholism. He's abusive, so he's a very much a tough character to really like, which is really an impressive role for Shia LaBeouf to take on, especially with all the oddness of his career in the past few years, and what people are thinking that he's kind of going off the rails, where he's kind of avant-garde.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get nominated, but it was kind of a packed year this year.
Yeah, interesting. But I really appreciated his performance in this, and you got to see a little bit of insight there. And of course, at the end of the credits, we see some pictures of his childhood. So I thought that was really interesting, because some of it, you just can't make it up when you're doing jokes with a chicken and you're a rodeo clown and whatever it is. You know, you can't make those kind of things up. But it's a wonderful performance there. Yeah, Josh Livingston is such a great actor. I look forward to everything that he's in as well. And it's a small role for him as well. I mean, it wasn't a big prestigious, you know, another kid that's you know, dealing with addiction movie like Timothy Chalamet, who I think is his nemesis. I think it's those two, you know, versus one another. Scott and I, he likes Timothy. I like, you know, Josh Livingston. So it's
you can like both of them. I like both of them as actors. You can,
yeah, but I just prefer one over the other. And
pretty different.
Well, you know, you have to, you know, it's team whoever. But yeah, I was really surprised. I actually kind of started this movie while I was in the kitchen making dinner, because I have a television in there, and you know, you're cranking out so many movies, so you just kind of give it the 20. And I had to pause it so I could finish up dinner, because it really got me involved right away, and I had to sit down and I was able to finish the movie. So it really pulls you in. Though it is tough subject matter, you get to see some fantastic performances. And though it may be a story that we're kind of familiar with, it was just done in a way that I thought very interesting, that him playing that role of his father now is, I mean, that's
what a way to exercise your demons, right? So like you have daddy issues, play your father in the biopic of your life.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a little too close to home, but I really appreciate Shia LaBeouf just, you know, really putting it out there.
Yeah, no, he's always been a good actor. He just made really bad choices, i.e. Transformers. So, you know,
I think there's a cash grab. There's one for you, one for me, and this pays for it, so he can do Honey Boy.
Yeah, but he had a lot of one for me's going there for a while. So not to mention bad behavior. So, so I think we could recommend everything on this catching up on 2019. For me, the two big ones, the two 4-star films. There's two 4-star films for me: Portrait of a Lady on Fire and The Nightingale. What about for you?
Most certainly the same way. You know, you text me and you were like, I saw Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I'm not telling you to go see it, but I had to rearrange my top 5, and I was like, oh, now I really got to see this. So I was so happy our Salem Cinema, our little independent theater, got it at the last second, and I was able to squeeze that in. And now that it's available, I've watched it again since then on television. So it's a totally a must.
Yeah, it's definitely one you could rewatch over and over, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that was our wrap up, and I'm not used to doing this on Zoom. So I'd like to thank our wonderful crew, even though they're not here with us right now, just for sticking with us for all the years. Hopefully some of them are watching this. And my fantastic co-host and our wonderful sponsors. Please support your local businesses right now any way you can. You can find us on CCTV here in Salem, KMUZ Radio, Scan TV in Silverton, and CAM in Corvallis. So have a great day and great movies. Thank you.